tune into a specific time and place.
Give us some other realities on this planet, Stewart, that have fascinated you in your investigations.
Well, one of the things that I found most fascinating was the fact that there are infinite realities basically occupying the same physical location, but the calibration of the vibrations are different so that we don't perceive them. It's kind of like a radio. You can tune the dial just a little bit at a time and get a completely different station, yet it's coming from the same radio. And that's what reality is like. If you can tune into a different frequency, you can see an entirely different vibration. So that there are realities where Earth is very different. There are realities where the reptilians never got here. There are realities where the Atlantean civilization stayed intact. There are realities where the Nazis won the war and took over the world. Every possibility exists. So whatever you can possibly think of or conceive of exists somewhere in creation.
You know what fascinates me about everything you've said tonight, Stewart, was the fact that the people may have construed the reptilians who went underground as being devils and hell in that entire episode. I mean, I find that to be absolutely fantastic and fascinating.
Well, everyone finds different aspects of this information for whatever reason that individual likes. But, for me, what I'd like to get across is that despite all of this, there's still hope. And that is, if we regain control of our own minds individually, then the control system would disappear.
All right, tell me. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think people need to realize that it's not hopeless. It's not a one-way street. We can reverse this if we take control of ourselves.
But we have to do it in mass. We can't do it in small numbers, can we?
That's true, but we need to start individually. And that's why I do the work that I do with the language of hyperspace and opening DNA and visualizations so that we can reintegrate the mind and then recreate our reality.
You and Richard Hoagland need to get together when you talk about hyperspace.
Well, we should all get together and change the way things are.
Now tell me, what do you talk about at some of these conferences you go to?
Well, I like to start out with what I call language of hyperspace, which is color, tone, and archetype, which I describe as the language of God-mind. All thought, if you could see the energy of thought, would have a color, a symbol, and a vibration or tone to it. If you learn how to connect them and like a sentence, if you will, you can create whatever it is that you want in physical reality. And I teach how to open DNA. I use color therapy. And in fact, for your listeners, on my website, I have a free ebook that they can download on color therapy. This is particularly the color brown that they can use and try for themselves. The mind really is everything. The brain is simply a tool that the mind uses, and we only use 10% or less of our brain capacity. So if we start to open a fraction of that other 90%, you can just imagine the abilities and functions that we could do. And we can change everything on this planet. And
will you take emails through your website?
Oh, yes, I get hundreds of emails per day. And, of course, my website is expansions.com. And those of you who go on there, you'll see my phone number, my fax, and you can even, this Q&A, I answer all questions. I have daily news that I post. It's very comprehensive.
Okay, well, I got to tell you, Stewart, keep up the good work. Let's take phone calls next hour with people of everything you've investigated, the Montauk Project, the reptilian agenda, the mind control. Is there one facet there that just fascinates you more than the next?
Well, what I have been doing a lot of in the last few years is deprogramming work, which is to undo the mind control that the government has imposed on people. And I work with people all over the world to help them deprogram from this pervasive system. And I find that is the most important work to do right now.
Well, that is fascinating. You can email me, George, at coasttocoastam.com. I'm getting lots of fast blasts about Stewart and some of the things that he is talking about tonight. So we'll do this too. We'll open up the phone lines. We'll give you the opportunity to check in with us next as well. I'm George Norrie. We'll be back in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. I'm George Norrie. Stewart Swerdlow is our guest, and your phone calls as well. Is everybody under this mind control attack, Stewart? Are we all the potential targets?
At this point, 100% of the Earth is targeted, and everyone has some form of mind control within their brains. But there's about 5% of the population that has specific programming, which means they have very deep functions. And we see this sometimes in people who are shooters, vigilante programming, stalkers. There's many, many different types of programs out there.
Some could be pure evil, though, Stuart. Some of these people could be committing these crimes of horror on their own, don't you think?
Well, that is also true. But if you notice, in this last 50 years, there's been a very high percentage of these kinds of crimes out there, especially ritualistic murders, serial killers, and this is a side effect or actually a direct cause by the mind control and programming.
To the phones we go, east of the Rockies. You're on the air with us on Coast to Coast. Hi there.
Hi, this is Josh from Columbus, Ohio. How you doing tonight?
Good, Josh. Thanks for calling.
Hey, no problem. I had a question for Stewart. I'm a very religious, spiritual person, and I actually happen to sort of agree with what you're saying. I actually believe that Yahweh or Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, I actually think this might be the God of the humans, the Atlanteans. And what you're saying about the reptilians, it just speaks to me because what do we hear about Satan? The first thing, what is he? He's the snake, the reptilian in the Garden of Eden. The beast at the end of times in the book of Revelation is the dragon. So I'm very curious to see whether you believe that maybe there is some sort of connection between, Judeo-Christian beliefs in the Creator God, who would maybe our God, the human God, versus the reptilian God, who may be Satan. And I'll take the answer off air. Thank you.
Okay, Josh, go ahead. You can elaborate, Stuart.
Thank you. Well, let me just start out by saying there's only one God. It's not God of humans and God of reptilians. There's only one God, or I call God mind, that creates all of existence. What we see in the Bible as far as the gods of the ancient Hebrews, they were alien beings. They were beings who directed humanity in a certain direction. They also genetically manipulated. They talk about taking the daughters of the sons of man as wives, etc. This is a hybridization program that we're seeing here. And the God mentioned in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, is none other than alien beings. Even the story of leading the Hebrews out of Egypt across the desert, following the pillars of light, these are what we would call UFOs in present terms. As far as the reptilians are concerned, they worship what, from a religious perspective, would be called demonic entities, but from my perspective, I call it entities from lower astral layers of existence. These are non-physical beings who manipulate society and people from the astral planes, and there is such a thing as connecting to the minds, what is called possession, and the reptilians worship them. Ultimately, if we go back far enough, there's only one God mind, there's only one creator, and even in the Bible it says that Satan only has the power that God gives him, or it. So I don't know if I've actually answered the question, but this is my perspective on the God situation.
Off to our first-time caller line. Hello there, you're with us. Go ahead.
Hi. This is Peter from Long Beach. My question to you is, if there is still a God and things like that, what happens when we die? What happens with the reptilians when they die? Do we still go to the same place, or do we go to a different place? And I also want to talk about a little bit about resurrection, such as or a person who is faking their death and coming back, such as Machiavelli. And there's the last thing I want to ask is, what about homosexuality? How does that seem to exist into our being if we are basically hybrids?
All right, well, let's take the first two, because that's a topic. The last topic is not what Coast to Coast is all about. I don't get into those kind of issues, Stewart. So if you'd address the first couple things that he so eloquently passed on. Go ahead.
Okay, well, when a person